Peace, family. Chauncey, aka you Karima, great man of God Media, right back at you once again with another GMOGmedia Spotlight. Alright, family, got another heavy topic. This topic I'm going to be dealing with why black leadership has failed. Collectively, it has failed. Alright, in the black community. Alright, family. Now, people ask me, how do I come up with these topics? Because I've been very consistent. Like I said, I've been doing with these topics. Well, I just basically draw out what's going on today. Just try to provide my own spin for social commentary. And, I piece together the things I come across in mainstream media, social media. And then once I get that information, I gather it, assimilate, and then I disperse the information to the people as suggestions, and I try to arrange them in a way where this is how the problem started, and these are my suggestions on how we can fix the problem. It's up to the people to implement those problems and see if they become solutions. So that's what I try to do, family. All right, so like I said, with this topic, I'm dealing with why black leadership has failed. All right, so this topic is dealing with black leadership, and I really don't like the term black leadership because that is a antiquated term. Black leadership, in a colloquial sense, in a common sphere sense. Yes, it's needed. We need black leadership, right? But collectively, we do not need black leadership as a group. Okay, we need to follow rules and regulations, aka a code of conduct. And I'm going to break that down later on in this vlog. All right, so as you know, everybody knows, we have a black president, Barack Obama. That is a so-called black leader, right? He's president of the United States 2 terms. Okay, a 2-term president. And, I already broke it down in my blog why blacks are being used as political pawns. Where I broke down why blacks are basically just pawns and puppets within the political atmosphere that is controlled and ran by the dominant society. So, with Barack Obama, when he is dealing with specific black issues, like in 2015 with so many issues that are dealing with gun violence pertaining to black men and women and children that are getting gunned down every day, when he addresses those issues and we retaliate or we react to those situations with protesting, doing marchings, things of that nature. And those type of things, they're symbolic, they're pointless and powerless, but we continue to do those things. But that's a whole nother topic of conversation. The point being is that when he is faced with issues dealing with black people directly, and the results of those issues of the mistreatment of black people collectively are landing right on his lap, and he has to respond to those situations, this is one of the results that you get. I'll play the clip right now.
Monday, when the riots first broke out, it was the brand new Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, her very first day on the job, who was up front and center discussing things. But now, the president, he was at a news conference with the Japanese Prime Minister, and he had some emotional statements to make about the events here in Baltimore. CNN's Michelle Kaczynski with more now from the White House. Michelle.
Hey, John and Christine, and keep in mind, when this rioting broke out and started escalating on Monday, what we heard from the White House was a very low-key response, and not similar to what we've seen in prior police incidents after Ferguson. But 24 hours later, the president knew he was going to get a question from somebody on this subject at this press conference, and he was ready. Just let loose on how he feels about things for 14 minutes, using pretty blunt language and saying there is no excuse for violence.
Senseless, violence and destruction. That is not a protest. That is not a statement. It's people, a handful of people taking advantage of a situation for their own purposes, and they need to be treated as criminals. Criminals and thugs who tore up the place. This has been a slow-rolling crisis. This has been going on for a long time. This is not new. And we shouldn't pretend that it's new. If our society really wanted to solve the problem, we could. It's just it would require everybody saying this is important, this is significant. And that we don't just pay attention to these communities when a CVS burns. But we're paying attention all the time because we consider those kids our kids, and we think they're important, and they shouldn't be living in poverty and violence. That's how I feel.
And the president, in some ways, didn't really hold back. I mean, saying that in large part what he was seeing there in Baltimore was not a protest, and not everybody was happy that he used the word thug either. But when you look at the entirety of what he said, you can see clearly he's really trying to be so diplomatic about this, cover all the bases. First, wanting to clearly, in strong terms, call out those who are committing acts of violence, applaud the people within the community who are trying to stop that violence. He even said that often they get far, far less attention than the violent people do. He also wanted to support police officers who are doing their job properly, but also call out those who aren't. And he put this extremely diplomatically, saying that there have been too many instances of police interacting with people, primarily African Americans, often poor, in ways that raise troubling questions. And he said it seems like these things are happening now every week or every couple of weeks. John and Christine.
So as you just saw with the clip, family, when dealing with issues where black people collectively are responding to a act of violence, an act of terrorism by race soldiers, aka police officers, domestic terrorism, and we react by protesting and we react in a violent way, it's a reaction to a negative act of violence that plagued the black community. All right. So when you have a situation where you have a negative action, someone is murdered, a black male, a black female, a black child is murdered in a black community. OK, and we respond collectively as a group by protesting and by marching. OK, and we are emotional beings, but we react to a situation emotionally and we vandalize things. We are called savages. We are called thugs. Okay, and those are white supremacist code words. We all know what those code words are. So savages, thugs, undesirables, that's what we are labeled as. And as you saw with the clip, Barack Obama used one of those white supremacist code words, which is thugs, to classify us. And so not dealing with the psychology of why we responded that way so violently. He just basically name called, didn't provide a solution, didn't provide a plan, didn't say we need to sit down with, some so-called black leaders and come up with an agenda to attack and resolve issues plaguing the black community. He has not done that. All right. And we can't completely absolve Barack Obama of not caring about black people. It falls back on us as well. But I would give him some credit on improving prison industrial complex policies by making sure we have policies in place where black male or black offenders who get out of prison are able to rehabilitate themselves. So he has come up with policies for that. So I give him props for that. But as a whole, he has failed, and we have failed also by making sure that he has dealt specifically for black issues and resolving these black issues of us being in a system of racism, white supremacy, and trying to come up with a plan to replace that with a system or a global system of justice. All right, family. So, like I said, Barack Obama has failed us as a leader collectively. all right, as a group. All right, we can even go back even further. We can go back to people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, right? Now, those men are extraordinary black leaders. Okay, extraordinary black leaders. So this is not a way for me to bash them at all. There's just no way, shape, or form I would ever bash Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, Marcus Garvey, people like that. Never bash them at all. The point of me bringing them up is the fact that when Malcolm X and MLK, Martin Luther King, were able to get together and attack black issues by working together, working collectively as a group, guess what happened? Racism, or aka the white supremacists, decided to come up with a plan to stop that. What was that plan called? COINTELPRO. Okay, so anytime you have black progress, anytime you have a quote unquote black messiah, and you have more than one black messiah, guess what happens? The white supremacists see that. They see that you're gaining momentum, and they want to go ahead and thwart and disable and dismantle that plan. All right, and, you know, for those of you who are not familiar with COINTELPRO, I'm going to read to you an actual FBI document, okay, that indicates the people I just mentioned in the FBI document. All right, and quote: "Following are transcripts of official FBI COINTELPRO documents obtained under the Freedom of Information Act. March 4th, 1968 was sent out by J. Edgar Hoover himself just 1 month before the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. It specifically identified Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam as primary targets for COINTELPRO, as well as Reverend King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Other released FBI documents show the Bureau had infiltration between Malcolm X Muslim Mosque Incorporated. Still others prove the FBI had undercover in the very room when he was assassinated. One such agent actually administered mouth-to-mouth to the dying man. Note, in originally released documents, most of the names of COINTELPRO targets are centered. However, the names which are included here exactly fit the spaces out of the FBI, and it's now also known that all these individuals were in fact targeted for neutralization by the FBI. All right, so as I said before, anytime you have a black leader that is progressively making a change in the community, in the black community, and it is garnering up so much attention, and another black leader is doing the same exact thing on the grassroots level, trying to make a change for the black community progressively from the grassroots level, and it's garnering up so much attention that the dominant society takes notice of that. Okay, they take notice of that, and they will infiltrate what you created. All right, which is why I said before, black leadership, okay, black leadership collectively is antiquated. We do not need to have black leadership to get us out of the condition that we are in, which is racism, white supremacy. Okay, so as an example, there was a poll on thegrio.com which indicated Black America doesn't lack leaders. Poll shows 24% say Reverend Al Sharpton speaks for them. Okay, so most African Americans, okay, consider Reverend Al Sharpton, you know, their black leader, their person that speaks to the black community as a leader. All right, and some of you may or may not know. All right, Reverend Al Sharpton obviously has been a fixture in the black community. I do not agree with that at all. Okay, I definitely. Let me take that back. Yes, I agree with that. He has been a fixture in the black community. But what some of you may not know is that Reverend Al Sharpton has been and admitted to being an FBI informant. Okay? So why would you trust somebody who speaks for black issues, who speaks to black issues, and that person was an FBI informant? Okay? You have people like Jesse Jackson, okay, who has ideologies and who also coined the phrase African American. Before that, we were just known as black, Negro, or colored. But Jesse Jackson coined the phrase African American. You know, people consider him as a black leader. All right. But he has ideologies that are antiquated. And it's my opinion, but this is not the 60s anymore. You know, we're actually in worse condition than we were back in the 60s because we have not progressed whatsoever collectively as a group. All right. But again, going back to this poll, 24% of black people consider people like Reverend Al Sharpton as a leader, an FBI informant. And Reverend Jesse Jackson is a recognizable so-called black leader. All right. Now, 2015 is about to end. We just had in October the Million Man March. Okay. The 25th anniversary. Okay. And Minister Louis Farrakhan, another fixture in the black community, he's also considered a leader. All right. Now, one of the mantras in the Million Man March was justice or else. Okay. And one of the underlining themes for justice or else, the or else part, was to boycott spending in white-owned businesses. Okay. And I stand behind that 100%. If you go back to my blog where I talk about Black Empowerment Friday, I laid out some great suggestions on what we need to do to empower ourselves under the 9 areas of activity. Okay. But going back to what I was talking about with the Million Man March, one of their mantras was to boycott white-owned businesses. Okay, stop shopping on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, stop shopping for Christmas, etc., right? But this year, okay, there was a report that came out that indicated Cyber Monday clocks record sales as mobile sales surge. Okay, so the article that just came out indicated that the holiday shopping season has done record-breaking numbers. The total sales for Cyber Monday, Black Friday, and Thanksgiving weekend had did well over $6 billion. So that was up from 2014, 2013, and 2012. All right, so it has not seen those numbers in 3 years. So it actually increased, and it's the highest number yet. But supposedly black people have the so-called buying power collectively at $1.1 trillion. So something doesn't add up. Okay? I'm not saying that the Million Man March was a failure. I don't think so. It's going to take time for us to see change, to see systematic change, and the Million Man March is a start. Okay? But when you see a spike in sales for Cyber Monday, for Black Friday, and Thanksgiving weekend, and Christmas is not even counted, people are still shopping at white-owned businesses, you have to wonder, are we really trying to make a change? Are we really empowering ourselves? Okay, are we really trying to make a parallel economy for black-owned businesses? Are we really trying to start up some tech companies, some software companies, banks, black institutions? All right, are we really trying to do that? And that's what you have to ask yourself. Are we really trying to do that? Because 25 years from now, we got to have at least 5 black institutions. Okay, black independent institutions, self-funded, ran by black people. All right. Are we going to see that? Are people trying to formulate a plan doing that right now? All right. Which segues into this particular guy, which is Dr. Umar Johnson. All right. He's another guy that is considered a black leader. All right. And as you may know or may not know, Dr. Umar Johnson is raising funds for a all-black independent school for boys called the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy School for Boys. Okay. He's trying to raise $4 million for a school he's trying to purchase in Virginia. The school is called St. Paul's College in Lawrenceville, Virginia. Okay. Now he's raised over $500,000 for the school. All right. And I think it's a great idea. You know, I respect Dr. Umar Johnson. And there's some things that I disagree with, but I will save that for another vlog. I'm not here to talk about that on this particular vlog. But, you know, there are some things I disagree with. But I think it's a great idea that he's doing, you know, trying to, you know, raise money and trying to start a all-black school, an all-black institution. I commend him for doing that. Okay. But at the same time, like I said, he's considered a black leader. But when you have another black leader that is on the same wavelength, and when that other black leader is trying to work with another black leader, you know, there will be some infighting. There's infighting with, no matter what group you are in, there's going to be infighting. No doubt about that. We all agree with that. But the person I'm also going to bring up is Dr. Boyce Watkins. Okay. You may or may not know Dr. Boyce Watkins and Dr. Umar Johnson are having a little beef between the two. All right. If you can go on Dr. Boyce Watkins' YouTube page, and there is a sister by the name of Maria Lloyd who's just bringing up a topic of conversation about Dr. Umar Johnson's school. She was asking him a legitimate question by saying, what happened to Dr. Umar Johnson's school? Why doesn't he have the school yet? And I also have questions too. You know, she asked questions about where's his business plan? Okay. Et cetera, et cetera. What, you know, how are you going to run the school? Things of that nature, you know? And I agree with those questions, right? Now, Dr. Umar saw the video and took offense to that. But anybody who has donated money to, especially you're trying to raise funds for a school, I wouldn't imagine if you donated money to something like that, you wouldn't have questions. It would shock me if you didn't have questions. But those were legitimate questions, and for some reason, Dr. Umar Johnson felt some type of way. And I understand there's another backstory behind that also. There was some other incident where I believe Dr. Boyce Watkins asked, you know, a question on Facebook about Dr. Umar Johnson's PhD, whether or not it was real or not. So there's some other underlining stories for their initial beef that they have. Okay. But the point being is that today, when you have black leaders, so-called black leaders, like Dr. Boyce Watkins, like Dr. Umar Johnson, who speak on large platforms, and they both have heavy credentials, And when they are trying to make a change for the black community, they can't team up collectively and get things done. Right? They're both recognized as black, so-called black leaders, but they can't collectively get things done because there's infighting, disagreements. There are people, as you see on the screen, Dr. Umar Johnson likes to make memes on his Instagram page. You know, that's his prerogative, but I don't think I would see a Martin Luther King of today worried about making memes. I don't think I would see a Marcus Garvey of today worried about making memes. I don't think I would see a Malcolm X of today worried about making memes. I don't think I would see a W.E.B. Du Bois of today worried about making memes because of a disagreement. I don't think I would see that. All right. So, like I said before, for some reason today, we cannot work collectively, especially the so-called black leaders. They don't work collectively as a group of people to try to resolve issues for the black community. This just can't be done. And let's just say they did try to do it. Just as I pointed out, the dominant society would take notice of that and infiltrate that movement. So what do you do? How do you resolve that situation? Well, my suggestion is, like I said earlier, we need to eradicate the ideology of black leadership and replace that with a code of conduct. That's what we need. For example, I'm 35 years old, so I remember back in the day, growing up, I remember a code of conduct system, a system where every black person would know exactly what to do for certain situations. For instance, growing up, when I go outside, and play with my friends, when I see the street light come on, that automatically means you go back in your house. Everybody who I knew understood exactly what that meant. When the street lights come on, you go in the house. Everybody knew what that meant. All right. Another example, when you get in trouble in school, all right, and you come home with a bad grade or what have you, you knew exactly what kind of punishment you would have, all right, for having bad grades and doing something that you weren't supposed to do in school. All right. Now, some black parents would, make them stop watching TV or, have them do, some kind of project, independent project or what have you. What I would have to do is whatever I'm lacking in school, I would have to do that as a project myself. For example, like, if I was not able to write, this is in grade school. If I was not able to write in a neat fashion, my mom would make me write my name or write something, which is called standards, writing the same thing over and over again 100 times until it's straightened out. All right. So those are some examples of what, I'm talking about in terms of code of conduct. Basically, a code of conduct is a list of things you do and a list of things you don't do. All right. For another example. All right. And when I'm talking about black leadership, and another reason why we need to eradicate the ideology of black leadership. Show me a group of Jewish people. If you can point out to me of that crowd of Jewish people, point to me the leader of the Jewish community. Okay? Point to me a leader of a Jewish community. Can you do the same thing for the Hispanic community? Point to me in that group of Hispanics you see. All right? In that group, can you point to me an Hispanic leader? Just a question. I don't think you can, because there is no one leader for a group in the Hispanic community. There is no one leader for the Jewish community. And some people may say, well, we need to go back and just follow what's in the Bible, going back into religion, right? And, it's quite obvious that black people are the most religious people under any ethnic group. We are the most religious people, hands down. And, most of black people are Christians and they follow the Bible. But how many of them follow the Bible to a T? Okay. How many of them follow their religious doctrine to a T? I can name one group of people who do that, and that is the Jewish community. All right. For an example, the Jewish community, they follow things like ethics, which covers all 9 areas of activity. All right. Which includes dietary laws. Okay. Which includes economics, education. All right. They have things set up where when you have a Jewish family, they're already set up to go become a doctor or a lawyer, because that is what's required for them to do under their Jewish ethic code. All right. And another thing regarding their Jewish ethic code, they follow things like justice, truth, and peace. All right. Loving, kindness, and compassion, self-respect. They also have a business ethic code or ethic law. They also have treatment of animals, environmental ethics, and the list goes on and on. And so again, the ideology of black leadership is antiquated. We don't need the dominant society to point to a black leader so they can go infiltrate that person and, destroy what progress they have. We don't need that. We need to follow a code of conduct so that we cannot be infiltrated. They can't just go to one person, because we have a system in place what we follow that can progressively eliminate what we have, which is racism, white supremacy. All right. So we need a code of conduct system, a self-funded, independent code of conduct system. All right. That identifies all 9 areas of activity, of a list of things you do and a list of things you don't do. It's just that simple. Collectively as a group, we need to come up with a plan under the 9 areas of activity of a code of conduct system. All right. And that, again, my channel is to offer suggestions of how to eliminate and replace the system of racism, white supremacy with the system of justice. And that suggestion is to follow a code of conduct system. All right. So the ideology is coming from the Lily Fullards of the world, the Dr. Francis Cress Welsons of the world. But with today's society, we need to update that and come up with our own code of conduct system collectively as a group. So just like Black Lives Matter is a movement that's funded by, let's just keep it real, it's funded by George Soros, a white person, okay, a suspected white supremacist. We need to have our own self-funded movement, which is called the Black Code, aka the code system or the codified system. All right, whatever you want to call it, but we just need rules and regulations that are self-funded by us for us to follow, which is the code of conduct system. All right, family. So that pretty much wraps it up. Make sure you share, comment, subscribe. GMOGmedia TV. Again, I will be bringing you consistent content, all right, on this channel. Spread the word with this channel. Like I said, I'm just an everyday average guy, 35 years old, married, 3 kids. I have a mortgage, I pay taxes. I just observe things and I try to offer suggestions on how to replace the system that we're in, which is racism, white supremacy, with the system of justice. All right, family, make sure you follow me on Twitter at @UKarimaBeats, BEATZ. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. All right, family, Chauncey, aka Karima, Great Man of God Media, signing out. Peace.